Hello kids, it's me again, back with another video. Now, this was not the first video that I thought I was going to be making for 2024. Not like I had any plans, but this is kind of maybe a bit odd for my first video. But today we're going to be talking about something that has started as one thing and kind of ran away from itself and has become this weird rumor that 200 bodies were just found one day at a grave in Jackson, Mississippi. And that's just not true. It's just simply not true. Parts of it are true, but other parts have been misrepresented or just kind of been made into untruths. And, before I get into this, we're gonna watch a video by Vaush. I'm not really super familiar with Vaush other than he's one of those, I guess, leftist. I'm not even really sure what his political affiliations are. I'm presumably leftist, kind of in that class with Hassan and the rest of them. I do know that Vaush isn't super respected by people, but honestly, I don't know who he is. I'm not really sure what his deal is other than he's one of those leftist react streamers and he likes to debate people. So I'm not super familiar with his work. I'm not going into this hoping that he gets things wrong. I'm not trying to call him out or anything like that. In fact, I hope he gets things about the situation correctly, but I haven't seen this full video. I've only seen literally the first minute of it. And in that first minute, I saw, okay, there is definitely some misinformation going around. And this kind of misinformation does not help anyone. It doesn't help, the people who were buried in this pauper's grave. It's not going to help the families of the people buried in this pauper's grave. It's not going to help anyone. It is only hurtful. And, why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about this seemingly random subject? Well, for one, I live in Jackson, Mississippi. This June will mark 3 years since I've lived here. I'm not a native. I'm not from Mississippi. I'm from Alabama, actually. But, as I guess you would call me a transplant, I do feel a strange amount of kinship to Mississippi. And, Jackson specifically has been in the news for a number of reasons throughout the time that I've lived here. And there are reasons for us to look at Mississippi as a whole, or just Jackson, and go wow, things are really messed up here. But not presenting the situation correctly is not the way to go about it. And I just have a feeling that's going on. Not only do I live in Mississippi and in Jackson, but I work for a local news station. I won't say which one because I like having my privacy. Big surprise. And not only that, although I do not work in the news department, I work in the newsroom. So I'm very, very familiar with the situation. I feel like I have just the tiniest bit of authority to speak on what's actually going on, and I kind of wanted to cut through some of the misinformation by doing this, and hopefully this video can reach some people so that they can actually get the actual idea of what's going on and not, again, misinformation. And so before I begin this, however, I want to make one thing clear. Even though I am doing this to clear up these rumors, I am not pro-police, and I'm certainly not pro-Jackson Police Department. I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not doing this for the benefit of the police. I don't know who I'm doing this for the benefit of, but, it's not good to have lies or misinformation about a situation going around. So that's really the point of me making this video. It's not to help the cops because, if you know really anything, or even if you live here in Mississippi or Jackson or the metro area, you will know that basically every police department in the city and in the metro area has some shady stuff going on. And you don't even have to work for the news to know about that. Yeah, another disclaimer, just to cover my bases, I am not speaking on behalf of my employer, just in case I even have to say that. Right now, I am speaking in my capacity as just a person with a camera and some knowledge, not as a journalist, because number one, I'm not a journalist, but not as a journalist with any kind of authority on that. So just to make that one thing clear before we start. The title of this video is Hundreds of Bodies Found Buried in Unmarked Graves in Mississippi, and already getting a little bit of misinformation there. Right off the bat, we've got some not super truthful information. The bodies weren't found there. They were always known to be there. Now, for those who don't know, a pauper's grave, these were very, popular back in the day. I don't know why I'm saying it like that, but basically a pauper's grave is where a person is buried if they do not have the proper funds for a burial, or if their body goes unclaimed. For example, you can't really see it here. I have the poster on my wall for the film Amadeus. And at the end of this film, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart dies. And just as in real life, he's buried in a mass pauper's grave because at the end of the film, he's basically broke. He's destitute. He doesn't have any money. So, it's not like this isn't a mass grave, because in the minute that I've watched this, I've seen him refer to it as a mass grave. Typically, this could be different, but typically only one body goes in each plot. Now, are there potentially more than one body in a singular plot? Probably. However, this isn't just like an open hole in the ground where they're just dumping people in there. So I want to make that clear before we even get started.
Did you see in Mississippi they found a mass grave of black people killed by police?
See, that right there, that's the first thing. Apparently this person heard that. I'm not even sure who commented this, but that right there, 12 seconds in, we're already at the first piece of misinformation. Number one, again, it's not a mass grave. It's a pauper's graveyard, which is two very different things. And number two, it's not just black people. Now, it is a lot of black people. However, again, Jackson and most of Hinds County, where Jackson is inside of, is a majority black area. So, just statistically, there's going to be more black people in there. But, one if this even is a good thing to take away, is that this isn't a race thing. For once, something happens in Mississippi and it's not just black people at the heel of it. It's mostly a class thing. I will say that. So it's a mixture of white and black people that are buried at the pauper's grave, but it's mostly people of a lower socioeconomic status. Just to clear that one thing up.
I saw the news about the mass grave. Is it confirmed that it was killed by police?
And also, not all of these people were killed by police. I don't know if he's going to get into it a little bit more, but some of these people just ended up dying. In fact, I have heard reports in the newsroom that I work that several people in the list, because there is a big list of the people that are buried there, were just homeless people who died. Which, again, that doesn't make the situation any better, but they were not all killed by the police. However, there are some that were killed by the police, and maybe he goes into it. Another thing is that when he, I guess, looks at the news report for this, he is looking at, I think it's PBS News Hour, which I have nothing against PBS. I think they're a perfectly sufficient news source, but for something like this, not just because I work at a local news station, but you would think that the first place you would want to look would be news outlets that are actually in at least Mississippi, at least the state of Mississippi. You don't even have to go to the local news outlets. There are, if you're against for-profit news, which some people are for various reasons, but there is an excellent nonprofit news organization, Mississippi Today, and they are not the ones who broke the story. In fact, I believe it was NBC News that broke the story initially. So why you wouldn't go to, either NBC News or a local outlet, for-profit or non-profit, is beyond me. Maybe someone just sent him this link or he just Googled it and that was the first thing that came up. But, you'll see a little bit later on that they are using footage from local news outlets, so that's at least kind of good.
Bodies buried in unmarked graves behind a jail outside of Jackson, Mississippi.
And another thing, this isn't actually physically in Jackson. One thing that I've heard, and I know I'm kind of diverting from the video itself, but one thing that I have heard is that we were getting calls into our newsroom this Friday, what's today? Today's Sunday, so, a couple days ago, of people asking us, why aren't we reporting on the 200 bodies that were found behind JPD headquarters? And it's like, where did you hear that at? And also, I don't know if you probably don't if you're watching this video, but this is JPD headquarters, okay? If you can see this is downtown, right? There is not really anywhere for bodies to be buried unless they were put beneath the concrete or something. So, already this is starting to, the truth is starting to get away from what is actually being said. So this PBS News Hour piece is getting things correct, which is not surprising.
It's marked by just a metal rod and a number. And
another I'm pausing it so much, I know, but I was going to say a different thing before. Right, this isn't in Jackson. This pauper's grave is actually in Raymond, Mississippi, which is it's in Hinds County, but it's like west of Jackson. It's a little bit outside of Jackson at the Raymond Detention Center, which is Hinds County's like county jail, essentially. So this isn't in Jackson, right?
Yeah, but if you die in police custody in a way that gets like hidden in a grave like this, you were probably killed by police. Like,
which, I mean, you know, he's not necessarily wrong about that. But again, I want to make abundantly clear that not every single person buried in this pauper's grave was killed by the police. Some of them were, yes. And hopefully he will cover it. If not, I will talk about it. But some of them were. All of them were not. Lying about that doesn't really make things any better. Which I'm not saying he's like purposefully lying. I don't even know if he knows the truth himself. I don't think this guy's from Mississippi. I don't think he knows. So I don't think that's a point against him.
Oh yeah, so the police were just killing people and burying them in a mass grave. Okay, yeah.
Which, okay, again, I want to make clear, it's not like that. It's just not like that, okay? There are some people, maybe some of these people have just died in jail, you know, died in jail of old age, completely different reasons. Nobody came to claim their body. Nobody had the money to give a proper burial to them or something like that, and they buried them out there. There are some cases like that. And then there is the case of Dexter Wade, which I do want to talk about a little bit. So Dexter Wade was a person who was, yes, killed by Jackson police. A police officer going a very, very fast, I think it might have been at night, hit Dexter, and he basically died on contact. And instead of doing the proper procedures, he basically just kind of called the coroner and was like, hey, we got to bury this guy, you know, something like that. And the thing about it, the whole kerfuffle regarding Dexter Wade specifically is that the coroner and the police claim that they didn't notify his mother because he didn't have any identification on him, and therefore they couldn't identify him. But that was later found to be wrong. Not only did he have his wallet and his ID on him, he had a pill bottle, a prescription pill bottle that had his name on him. Actually, I got that kind of backwards. At first they said they had a prescription pill bottle with his name on it. However, I guess, you know, they couldn't positively identify that as belonging to him. However, it later came out that he had his wallet and his ID on him, and that the coroner like wrote his name on, I guess, whatever paperwork they have to do when they find a dead body, you know, that kind of thing. And they just chose not to notify his mother, who by the time he died had put out a missing persons report on him. So there was some negligence in that. However, aside from Dexter Wade and maybe a couple of other people, that's the only confirmed case right now that we have of the Jackson Police Department or any other agency literally killing somebody and essentially hiding their body.
Since then, I am joined now by Betterson Wade and civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who is...
And also, Ben Crump has, as I know right now, he represents 3 families of people who were buried in the pauper's grave who did not know that their loved one was there. One is the family of Dexter Wade, and that's Betterson, that's his mom. Another is Mario Moore, who did not, the family of Mario Moore didn't know that, number one, he had died, or that he was buried in that pauper's grave until a local news report published a list of names of unreported homicides. A family member saw that list, saw Mario Moore's name literally right at the top, and then that was how they realized that Mario was dead. And they later realized that he was buried out there. And the other one, this one is sort of more recent. Not that I haven't heard about it. I have heard about it, obviously, but I don't know the full details on it. One is a man from Florence who ended up dying somewhere in Hinds County. And by the way, I should say Florence, again, it's not in Hinds County. It's in Rankin County. It's a little bit south of here. But he died in Hinds County, and therefore they buried him in the pauper's grave. But again, didn't notify any of his family, who I believe also might have put out a missing persons report on him. I can't quite remember that one. And the person in Florence, he was white. So again, this isn't Thankfully, for once, not a race issue. It's a class issue, unfortunately.
There's such a meaningful juxtaposition here, because you know how thanks to true crime, there's this gigantic like internet industry of convincing white women who live in upper middle class suburbs that they're going to be kidnapped by El Salvadorian sex traffickers or something. Meanwhile, like in American history, I mean, even up to like the present day, like contemporarily, you know, there are so many black people that have gone missing. Like,
before he goes on, I do want to say that the thing about, you know, oh man, what was it? Zip ties on your side mirror or on your windshield wipers or the thing in the snow. My mom sent me so many of those when I first went off to college. It was so maddening because it was all fake. In fact, I have a video on my channel about this. I think it's called No, You're Not Going to Get Kidnapped. It's a quick vid, so it's not, you know, a lot of editing or anything. But yeah, a lot of people, I mean, old dude here said it is usually a lot of white women, are convinced that they're going to get sex trafficked by random people when in reality, the people most, you know, vulnerable to human trafficking are people of color, people of a lower socioeconomic status, and it's most likely to be done by people you know, not strangers. And then, you know, meanwhile, stuff like this is happening. And also, I want to say, so far, aside from, you know, the first, like, couple of minutes, I mean, mostly it's just been him watching this video, which it's PBS News Hour, so it's going to be pretty factual. So far, so good.
Silky Slim Reed, who has been outspoken on the events, described a morbid scene at the burial ground when visiting, reporting that buzzards fly overhead, attracted to the disturbing stench that emanates from the improper burials and shallow graves.
Yeah, another thing about that is that when, you know, these people die and are buried here, the bodies aren't embalmed. And in fact, in Dexter Wade's case, what they ended up doing was exhuming his body so that an independent autopsy could be found. And they found that his body had gone under, you know, advanced stages of decomposition, because I believe he was there for, if not a year, then almost a year. So he had been buried for a while. They just put you in a bag and put you in the ground, essentially. So I would imagine that the conditions there are pretty freaking terrible.
Like this was just right behind the goddamn prison. Like they were still doing this. The plot where this guy was buried was plot 672. There are hundreds of people there.
Which again, this isn't outside of the ordinary. I would hazard a guess and say that most jails, or I guess prisons like this, have paupers' graves where, you know, if you have like a lifer, somebody who's in jail for life, you know, did something heinous, all their family just doesn't care about them anymore, they have to be buried somewhere. You know, they can't just let the body stay there. So they usually put them in these paupers' graves, again, usually behind jails. However, I do want to point out that this situation is very, very corrupt and very unusual. So I do want to make that point very clear. But it's not unusual that paupers' graves like this exist behind or within the vicinity of jails and prisons.
Maybe she got drunk and fell in a ditch, huh? And meanwhile, that cop is like friends with the guys who did it, you know?
I will say that is pretty close to the parallel of what happened here, because again, the person who ran over Dexter Wade going, I can't stress this enough, very, very fast. I'm not saying the exact miles per hour because I can't remember if the exact speed had been published, and I don't want to go around saying things that haven't actually been published yet, but it was really fast, right? Far faster than you should ever be driving down any road if you're not like on a racetrack or something like that. That was a police officer, and it was essentially a police cover-up. So yeah, that the situation is very parallel.
His body was exhumed in November. There was an autopsy conducted. He was given...
Yeah, and these, again, they don't put them in coffins or caskets or even just like a wooden box. They just put their bodies in a bag and put them in the ground, essentially, unembalmed.
But I also understand a wallet was found in his front pocket with his ID, his home address, his insurance card. What's the explanation officials give for why no one was notified he had been killed and buried?
Yep.
And you should know that Miss Bettison is the named plaintiff in a lawsuit against the Jackson Police Department.
I forgot about this part. I completely forgot about this part. So yes, what I remember happening, okay, I totally forgot about this. I believe Betterson's brother was a victim of police brutality by the Jackson Police Department, and she was working to get justice for him and had sued the police department. And, you know, obviously there's no way to know their true intentions, but it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility to say that they assisted in covering up all of this because of the active lawsuit that was happening. I've forgotten all about that. That's insane.
Yeah, it's because the cops killed them. That's why. If in any other situation, if a person dies under unknown circumstances and then a group of people take his body, don't report.
Which, by the way, it wasn't unknown circumstances. He was run over. I can't stress this enough. He was run over by a police officer in a patrol car, going very, very fast, really fast, guys, like so fast, like incredibly fast. Run over. Literally run over, not just hit, run over, right? So not really unknown circumstances. We know how this happened. And the autopsy report reflects that even though, you know, it was after Dexter's body had been under advanced stages of decomposition, they could tell that that is what had happened.
And then bury it in like an unmarked grave or whatever. Like
technically not unmarked. Again, I don't want to be like really pedantic in all of this because again, you know, I just think that these little details are very important. Like, there are currently some bodies that are there that are not marked, right? But most of them are marked with numbers, not names, numbers, so that, you know, they could keep up with who is buried where, for clerical reasons, I would assume. So, technically not unmarked. I mean, the news report itself said that, or no, Vaush himself said that his body had the number 672 or something like that. 672, I think. Technically not unmarked, but still.
You assume they're the ones who killed them. Why would you not? That's like a pretty easy layup. It's a pretty clear explanation.
Which, no, it's not a clear explanation because, again, the bodies that are in this pauper's grave, they range from, you know, people who were lifers in jail who died because they are spending life in jail and therefore they die there and are buried there. There are homeless people who were not killed by the police, who were just found dead, who are buried there because they, for whatever reason, could not find family to claim these bodies. And sometimes the police kill someone and hide their body. But most of the time, it really is just that. Just people who are in jail who die, or people whose bodies are found that are dead and are unclaimed. I would hazard a guess that, actually, no, I don't even have to hazard any guesses, because there's a published list of names that are buried in these paupers' graves that are John Does and Jane Does. So there are some unidentified bodies there. You know, if you have a John Doe that's been a victim of a crime, can't find any family, they're going to be buried there. So no, it's not just people that the cops have killed. It's also people that the cops have killed, but it's not just people who the cops have killed. I want to make that very clear.
Marquita Moore was notified of the death of her older brother, Mario Terrell Moore, 40, from an online article revealing cases of 24 homicide victims in which the Jackson police had failed to notify the public or the families. Moore's brother was second on the list. All 24 victims were from a single year. That 1 year, two...
Yeah, so the article that he's talking about is a local news outlet here had gone through the records, because realistically what's supposed to happen is that the Jackson Police Department is supposed to report homicides that have happened so that they can be part of the crime statistics. But what has been going on is that Jackson Police has been underreporting crime statistics, I guess to make themselves look better, to make it look like, hey, guys, we're in charge, less crime is happening. When in reality, like, no, the same amount of crime is happening. In fact, we ran into this issue before because they had earlier, either this week or last week, the crime statistics were published by Jackson Police. And what they had reported is that there was a 20% decrease in homicides from, I believe, 2022 to 2023, when in reality, if you actually go in and calculate it, like our reporters did, there was only a 13% increase. And in fact, I was in the newsroom when one of our reporters called them and was like, hey, I see on the Jackson Police Department website, it says crime went down by 20%, but it's 13%. How did that happen? And all they could do was like apologize and change it. So yeah, there's definitely some cover-up business going on.
Dozen people thrown in the ditch back there behind the jail.
Not a ditch. Again, not a ditch, not a hole in the ground. It's a regular, well, I mean, it's obviously not a regular graveyard. There aren't any headstones. There's only numbers, but it's if you picture a graveyard, there you have it. It's not, I mean, it was in the video itself. You could see all of the graves lined up with all of the numbers. It's not a ditch. Like, what's the point of calling it a ditch? To make it look worse than it is? I guess it's already bad, though. If it's already really bad, why do you have to represent things in the way that make it look worse? You don't have to do that. It's already bad,
Jail in a single year. At minimum, 2 dozen.
And also, hold up, run that back. What did he just say?
From a single year. That 1 year, 2 dozen people thrown in the ditch.
Okay, so this is something that actually gets wrong. Sorry, Vaush, but you're a little bit wrong here. The list of names in that, the list of unreported homicides for, I believe, is it 2022? Either 22 or 23. I can't remember. Either way, that list of names, all of those people were not buried in the pauper's grave, okay? Some of them were, all of them were not. And again, not a ditch, but whatever.
Back there behind the jail in a single year. At minimum, 2 dozen.
And also the exact number, I believe, was 20 or 24, somewhere in that range, which I guess 24 is 2 dozen, but
Like this is like one police department that's just like regularly like dumping corpses back there.
Which, by the way, it's not just Jackson Police that is putting bodies back there. Since this is the Hinds County Police Department, or the Hinds County Sheriff's Office, it would be at least 2. So JPD, Hinds County Sheriff, at least 2.
Is genuinely surprised, given the environment, that they haven't faced extra legal consequences for their behavior. But they're cops.
Which, I guess he just said they are cops. I don't know why they would face such extra scrutiny. Hello, it's the police. Duh. I would expect nothing less than a cover-up going on. Like, realistically, it's the cops.
Moore would later learn that her older brother Mario had been bludgeoned to death, wrapped in a tarp, and left in the street. Even this website, like bludgeoned to death by who? Presumably the police didn't.
So the thing with the death of Mario Moore, it has still been, I don't want to say uninvestigated, because I'm sure they maybe tried, but it's not the police that killed Mario Moore. That we know of right now. But it's unlikely that the police killed Mario Moore. It's probably, I don't want to make it sound like this, but it really was probably just a regular homicide with like no cops involved, and they just didn't want to do any extra paperwork to try to notify the family, which is I guess why they didn't. In fact, another thing that I want to point out that happened, which is it's too little too late, but still very interesting, but the Jackson Police Department did not have a, written down, like set in stone death notification policy. But after the death not really after the death, because it was like a year later, but after the, media attention that the death of Mario Moore got, and I guess by extension, Dexter Wade, they actually do now have an actual death notification policy. And I remember it too. I remember the exact quote from JPD chief, I forgot his name, but the chief of police for Jackson Police Department, is that he said, "You would think we would have a death notification policy, but we did not, but we do now." That's literally what he said.
Not to know Angel Post, Vaush, but this seems like something the cons will bring up. Dexter Wade, statutory sodomy, you are correct. Conservatives will bring this up. The thing is, though, and this feels like a fairly straightforward counter-argument, in my opinion, is that
that's
the police can't murder people and bury them in unmarked graves.
What? That's not even him. Who is that? Bro, that's St. Louis, Missouri. Why is he even bringing this up? Okay, you can see it, but this is from the St. Louis County Police Department for another state. Why would he even show that? That's not even, you can look at the picture. That's a different guy. This is a completely different guy. Why would you even bring this up? That's not even the same guy. Bro, what?
Graves. That's not how this works. Doesn't matter what these guys do.
That's not even him. Bro, that's not even him. Like, what? Why would, huh? St. Louis, Missouri? Not even in Mississippi? That's not him. Bro, what? Huh? Listen, I get that was probably a chat member who had submitted that, but you couldn't even do the due diligence to see if it was in the same state. Bro, come on. What are you doing? What are you doing? What? Hey, what? Huh? Come on. St. Louis? Not nowhere near Hinds County, Mississippi? Come on, bro. That's not even the same guy. What? I hope somebody points this out. I hope somebody points this out, but they probably won't. Because that's literally not the same guy. Like, huh? What? Huh? What?
Even if these guys were like active serial killers who charged at police officers and had to be shot down in like self-defense or whatever, you still don't like bury them in an unmarked grave. You know?
Which exactly, but that's not even the same guy. That's a different Dexter Wade.
What you're doing right now, the conservative excuse for this, is almost certainly what the police are doing themselves, and they're thinking they're cleaning up.
I just can't get past the fact that that wasn't even the same guy. Like, huh? That's two different people, and one of them lives in Missouri, not Mississippi. By the way, hello, two different states. One's over here, one's here. Huh? I can't get past that. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, but even if it was a chat member who had sent that, you couldn't even see that this was St. Louis, Missouri, and not nowhere in Mississippi. Like, huh? Couldn't even compare the two pictures to see that those are two different people? Like, come on. I don't want to be mean, but like, read, just read, open your eyes, read a line, huh? Like, what?
And Mayor did say there were mistakes. He also just said that Dexter Wade's death was a tragic accident. He said there was no malicious intent in failing to notify the family. We know the police department.
Technically speaking, his death was an accident. Do I think that cop ran over him on purpose? I don't think so, because it happened at night. And let me tell you something about just the metro area in general, especially along the I-55 corridor between Jackson and like Ridgeland. There are a lot of pedestrian deaths on the two frontage roads and also just on I-55 itself. Like, I've even not really experienced it. I haven't, run somebody over, but all the time, especially, when I used to work in Ridgeland, because I used to work in Ridgeland, there would just be people walking along the side of the interstate. It's very unsafe. And, people, even though speed limit is 60, people drive really fast in that little I-55 corridor. So, pedestrian deaths are very common around here. And also because, being that we are in a not walkable area, there are just large swaths of places. I mean, even in my own neighborhood, there's hardly any sidewalks around here. People just be doing stuff in the street. Not that that means that they should get run over, but pedestrian deaths happen all the time, okay? So I don't think that cop intentionally ran Dexter over, but I do think the police department intentionally hid his death from his mother, considering all that was going on with the lawsuit at the time because of the death of her brother.
How exactly would he know that it's a mistake? Out of curiosity, how much information does the mayor have? The mayor is almost certainly complicit or has been covering this up,
Okay, listen, knowing what I know about like Lumumba, I don't think it's some grand conspiracy there. I think he's just trying to save face, because Jackson, again, already has like a terrible reputation, not just in, Mississippi, but in the metro area, in the rest of the United States, heck, in the world, right? Jackson, Mississippi has a terrible, terrible reputation, and I genuinely think he was saying that just to save face. I would be genuinely surprised, shocked, and flabbergasted if he was in on it. I don't think he's in on it. I think he said that to save face and like nothing else.
And I should say, Ms. Wade, I mentioned families because you are not alone here. There's been in the last few months that is.
Yeah, so these are, so I'm covering up Betterston a little bit here, but these are the other two families that are being represented by Ben Crump. The woman on the very left is the, I believe, mother of the man in Florence who died in Hinds County. And in the middle, that's not Mario Moore's sister. This is a different person. I'm not sure who she is. I think it might be another sister of, I believe, Mario Moore. So these are the three people that Ben Crump is representing presently.
It's 215 bodies, so I figure, yeah, it's probably a lot of.
Again, it's 215 bodies, but something that we found out is that the log of bodies that are buried in that pauper's grave goes back to, at minimum, 2008. So it's been more than 10 years. Let's see. I'm not about to do the math in my head. It's been more than 10 years since records were being kept about burials back there. The 215 bodies there, I mean, those aren't all recent. They could go back to as far as 2008, probably maybe before then. I guess it kind of depends on when the Hinds County or the Raymond Detention Center was built and when that grave was established, and I guess when they started taking records. But, you know, it's not, the police went out and killed 215 people in 2023 and dumped their bodies in a hole in the ground. Because I feel like that's how, not Vaush specifically, but I feel like that's how some people might be representing the situation when it genuinely isn't like that.
The federal government did a full investigation of the policing practices in Ferguson and then came out with like a 500-page report on how it was the most racist city in existence or whatever. Like, this is...
And, you know, I do hope that the feds come down here and do some kind of investigation on it. I hope they get what they're looking for, but, you know, not to sound jaded or cynical or anything like that, but it's gonna take a really long time. Like, even if that does happen, it's going to take a very, very long time. I'm talking more than 5, maybe more than 10 years. And, you know, maybe that's unrealistic, but things move very slowly. You know, not just in the justice system, but just in society in general, especially things like this. You know, things move very slowly. And I want to believe that all of this is going to get resolved very quickly, but in my heart of hearts, I know that it's going to take a really long time. But even still, I hope something happens. That's really all I can say.
Do you have any idea how many people are involved in this? Do you have any idea how many people are complicit in this? Like, we're talking about multiple people at the morgue. We're talking about EMTs. We're talking about detectives and investigators. We're talking about media, 100% media, because the...
Which, I mean... Listen, you know, a lot of people love to demonize mainstream media, which this is going to sound a certain type of way coming from me, a person who works in mainstream media, but there is nothing that investigative reporters love more than exposing the police. As someone who knows at least, you know, a couple investigative reporters, this right here is their bread and butter. This is what wins them Emmys, right? This kind of reporting, this is what wins them. Do you get Peabodys for journalism? The big journalism awards. This stuff right here, there is literally nothing in it for the media to lie about this, to cover this up. Not in present day anyway. There is no reason for the media to cover this up. Unless there's some kind of, you know, stuff going on between whoever's in charge in the media and the cops. There is no incentive to covering stuff like this up. In fact, there is only incentive to breaking these kinds of stories, you know, even in the most vain reasons, right? To say that, you know, I was the one that broke this story, or again, to win Emmys for it. This is reporters' bread and butter. Police corruption, it's also very tangibly very dangerous to report on stuff like this, but this is what they live for. There's no reason for them to cover this up. So to say that the media is somehow involved, I think, again, is just an untruth that I don't particularly like.
Idea of that many people going missing, and
also, something that I should say, anytime there's like a missing persons report or a silver alert or anything like that, which a silver alert, it's kind of like an Amber Alert, but it's for adults who are either above a certain age or have conditions that I think would impair their judgment. Anytime one of those like silver alerts is published, I can at least say for my outlet, we report on that. We put that, we report on that. In fact, we have reported on at least Mario Moore, because I can remember finding the actual, silver alert for Mario Moore on our website. So when people go missing, it's reported on. It's not maybe given the most media attention that it should be, but people go missing a lot. Not to say that, people go missing all the time. It's bad that people go missing, and maybe I do want, missing persons to be given a little bit more airtime, but we do report on missing people. There's no cover-up happening here.
And like local journalists or local media, like just never touching on this?
Which is not true. It's not true. Run that back. I want to see that full statement because... run that back.
Yeah, 100% media. Because the idea of...
Run that back a little bit more.
Like, this is insane, dude. What the... Do you have any idea how many people are involved in this? Do you have any idea how many people are complicit in this? Like, we're talking about multiple people at the morgue. We're talking about EMTs. We're talking about detectives and investigators. We're talking about media, 100% media. Because the idea of that many people going missing and like local journalists or local media, like just never touching on this, no shot.
Local media is touching on this. You saw in this piece that the footage that was being used of the pauper's burial or the pauper's grave was from WAPT, which is CBS affiliate here in Jackson. So the local news is picking up on this. We might have not broken the story because the story about Dexter Wade, that was NBC. But also another thing to keep in mind is that local news does not, especially if you're in a smaller market like Jackson is, for example, I don't know how to explain this, but basically for, I guess, television news, there are a list of markets all throughout the country. The number one market, I believe, is New York or Los Angeles, or they might be 1 and 2. The number 5 market, I think, is Atlanta, and Jackson, Mississippi's market, our DMA, which I forgot what DMA stands for, but our DMA is number 95 out of like 200 or so markets in the entire United States. Local news stations and local news publications in smaller markets do not have the resources that some of these larger publications like an NBC News might have. So, if we had an entire team of investigative reporters instead of just like, I can count them on one hand, maybe we would be able to report on stuff like this and go even deeper into it. But we just don't have the resources. And to expect, a local news outlet to have the same resources as a national news outlet like NBC, you're just showing that you don't really, I don't want to say you don't know what you're talking about, but at the same time, you don't know what you're talking about. So, you're expecting a lot from a team that doesn't have very much, essentially.
If there's any state which would have cities that would be organized to this extent, in this sort of like, murder of and disposal of black people, like this would be it. This is the...
And again, I'm gonna say it again. I don't think this is like some grand conspiracy. I just think it's widespread negligence. Negligence and the cops just getting away with it. It's not like a big circle of people are sitting around one of those like big circular tables and plotting, being like, all right, how are we going to make black people's lives very hard? Or how are we going to make people in, lower socioeconomic classes' lives very hard? It's not that thought out, It's like, it's vestiges of the past that are just carried on into now, Back then, maybe it was a circle of evil people being like, all right, how are we going to make black people's lives really hard? But now it's just that there hasn't been any work done to improve the situation of black people and people of lower socioeconomic class. So this stuff is just allowed to happen. Not that, it is strictly encouraged. Like, hey, if you see a black person walking down a dimly lit road, you should run them over. Like, no, that's not going on. That would be cartoonishly evil. And, sometimes, like with the what was it, Louisville Metro Police Department, sometimes they are cartoonishly evil. With these local police departments here in Jackson and Hinds County, I genuinely don't think it's like that. And again, I want to make abundantly clear, I am not going up for the police right now. I am not trying to defend them, okay? What they are doing is tangibly really, really bad, and it does need to be looked into. I do want a federal investigation, but again, it's not as well thought out as some people like to think.
Would the morgue be necessary? I think the cops could just keep this among themselves. No, I think the morgue would have to. I'm pretty sure that on some level, the morgue has some degree of awareness of...
And I think by morgue, he means coroner, because the coroner is, in this situation, a little bit complicit, because again, all of this identifying information was found on Dexter Wade's body. They didn't do anything with it. They tried to claim that they couldn't find anything on him. And now, really what's going on is everybody's passing the buck to one another, because the cops are saying, oh, it's the coroner's fault. The coroner's saying, oh, it's the cop's fault. And, the mayor's saying, like, oh, this is an unfortunate situation. So nobody's really taking responsibility for this, where, I think everyone might be a little bit equally responsible for all of this. So
the fact that all of this has happened and not a single police officer has been named in this conversation is insane to me.
So we actually do have the name of the officer that did it. It's just that for a number of reasons, probably legal reasons, because I know if we were cleared to do it legally, we would have by now. We have not been able to release the name of the officer. It's very unfortunate that we haven't been able to do that. Also, I should say, I'm not like, ooh, we know. I don't personally know, but I do know that our reporters at my workplace do have the name of the officer. It's just, again, for probably very valid legal reasons, we haven't been able to release that name. And that probably goes for all the other outlets, because again, if they were able to, they would have by now. Like I said, this kind of thing is reporters' bread and butter. They love stuff like this. And trust me, if they could have, they would have by now. The person who has done this has been identified, right? It just is not able to be released for, again, I don't know the reasons, but I'm assuming it's for legal reasons.
Was number 672.
Yeah.
That means there are 600.
Again, look at this. This is not, this is not a big hole in the ground in somewhere in Hinds County. It's not a ditch. It's a graveyard. Essentially is what it is a graveyard. So again, trying to misrepresent it into being like this big open hole in the ground where bodies are thrown in and vultures are pecking on bones, it's not helping anyone. So I'm not sure why people are representing it like that when that is not the case.
I'm sorry. Not to be doom or whatever. The cops that did this are probably going to get away with it. Like, there's probably literally dozens of cops that are all like...
Now, I will say this. I know I said I don't want to be cynical or anything before, but maybe this is me being too optimistic. I don't think they're going to get away with it, because, I mean, if you look at what was happening with the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, where they literally were an actual gang, okay, the goon squad, right, going around trying to kill people, and they didn't get away with it. They're all sitting in jail right now. So I am at least a little bit confident that at the very least, the officer that ran over Dexter Wade might see some justice for this. Am I being too optimistic? Maybe, but I don't know. That's just what I feel. Maybe I'm just being a far too optimistic zoomer, but I think the tides might be changing just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Someone else here said other prisoners have to dig the graves. I don't think that's true.
I do think that's true, by the way, given that, how prisons in general, but especially like prisons in Mississippi utilize their prisoners. I mean, any given day you can be driving, again, in that really weird I-55 corridor between Jackson and Ridgeland. You can see... and I would see it all the time driving to work at my old job too. They would call them the trustees. They were women's prisoners that would wear the white and green striped jumpsuits, picking up trash on the side of the road. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility that these prisoners were also digging these graves. I could see it happening. Because, I mean, the corrections officers aren't going to be doing it. So, you know, I think they were.
In fact, I think somebody in chat just made that up. I don't think that's true at all.
That doesn't even sound made up. So like, okay.
That would be like,
Also, didn't Ben Crump just say that is what was happening, that the other prisoners were digging these graves? Like, I don't think it's that outside of the realm of possibility, knowing what I know, but whatever, I guess.
like a ridiculous added risk on the part of the police department. If they want to get away with killing and burying a bunch of black people, like in unmarked graves, the idea of involving other prisoners who are, again, in Mississippi, probably, you know, more likely to be black, that would just massively increase the risk for them.
Which again, it's not just people that the cops have killed that are in these graves. Again, in the county jail, you got a lifer, they die, you got to bury them somewhere. And it makes sense to me that they would use the prisoners to dig those graves. Is it incredibly macabre? Yes, but they use prisoners for labor in all kinds of ways. I don't see why he doesn't believe that this could be a possibility. That's actually kind of strange. Like, why don't you think that? Well, I guess because he's under the impression that, you know, this is some grand, you know, overarching conspiracy where people are mustache twirling about how they can make people's lives worse.
They're probably doing it themselves.
They are not. I can tell you they are not.
In that video, I didn't see that.
Yes.
Did I mishear that? Did I just not hear that? I don't think that's true. You read it in the article out loud? Did I just like blank on that? 1 second. Suggested the practice of burying victims in the paupers field has been going on for years. Oh, here we go. Like in other cases, the Jackson Police Department did not inform the family, and the county inmates were made to bury his body along the others. Oh, okay. Yeah. I really did just go right over that. No shit. Holy. Then wouldn't the prisoners just know everything? Couldn't they be?
Why would they know anything? How do you think this is happening? Because all they know is that, all right, somebody else is going to get buried in the pauper's grave. Who knows who it is? They don't know who it is. They just see it's a body in a green bag. I mean, they probably know that it wasn't someone in the jail who died, because I would imagine that, you know, someone dying in the jail, word would get around quickly to the other prisoners. You know, maybe it's another homeless person that was found. Maybe it's just another John Doe that can't be identified and family can't be, you know, contacted. Like, what? Huh?
Be interviewed? Why would they do that? Sorry, that...
Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew this already, but I think Vaush just genuinely doesn't really know what's, you know, going on or how those things work. I'm not really going to fault him for that, but as someone who, you know, has at least a little bit of knowledge of how this has been going on, Vaush has a really big audience, you know? I don't know how many viewers, like regular concurrent viewers, his streams get, but I know it's a lot. And to be saying things like that to these people who, let's face it, are probably very young. Because I'll tell you now, when I was in high school and even in college, I had unlimited free time. And what I would use with that free time is I would watch Twitch streamers. And, you know, I'm young, I'm impressionable. This person, he's got a beard and glasses. He looks like he knows what he's talking about. So I would listen to him. You know, if I were a younger viewer of his, maybe I would think that, oh, man, they have a grand conspiracy going on in Mississippi where the cops are killing people and putting them in a ditch in the middle of the woods or whatever, or they buried them behind JPD headquarters and the media isn't talking about it. But now that I actually do have some, you know, first of all, common sense. Secondly, I have, you know, experience, not really experience, but I work for the media. So I know these things. Like, I know better than to say these things, but him, who is just, you know, let's face it, he's just some guy, right? He's just some guy. He's a guy on Twitch that people listen to and respect, but he doesn't know what's going on. And I think that's, you know, I don't want to catastrophize and say it's dangerous, but it's definitely irresponsible. I'll say that much. It's irresponsible.
That was so unbelievable to me that I guess my brain just kind of skipped over that. The idea of the police being so arrogant that they would leave that many witnesses to their murders.
Again, it's not like these people are witnesses, right? It's not like the cops pull up with like a bloody mangled body in the back and they're telling the prisoners like, hey, bury this guy. I'm sure that the bodies came from the coroner, probably in a coroner van. And so the overseer, whomever is in charge of these prisoners, I don't know how that works, a correctional officer or something like that, is like, all right, it's time to bury another body. Get your shovels. And that's what went on, right? Because we saw that Dexter Wade's body was in a green velvet bag that said, I think it said Hinds County Coroner, something like that. So it's not like, they don't know. And they're certainly not telling them, like, hey, we got a new body in the truck. This one was ran over by a cop. Better not tell anyone. It's not like that.
They're prisoners? Yeah, I know, but it's still something. It's not nothing. Prisoners don't have no contact to the outside world. I guess they probably, like, threatened them or promised them privileges. Yeah.
Which, again, it doesn't even have to be like that. Because, again, the people that are buried in these graves are homeless people. John and Jane Doe's. Just unidentified bodies, things like that. It's really not that deep. It really isn't that deep. So I will say, all right, for the most part, because, Vaush was just watching a PBS News Hour piece, and those tend to be pretty accurate. I will say for the most part, there isn't a whole lot of misinformation, but you can just tell when people don't have real knowledge of a situation, or they don't really know like what's going on. They're just kind of willing to say whatever. That these are, every single one of the 215 bodies was someone killed by the Jackson police and dumped there, and not that, they probably came from the coroner to be buried there because that is where bodies like that are buried. It's just, is spreading misinformation of this caliber as harmful as, like, a cop running a guy over at, again, a very high speed and covering it up? Is misinformation as harmful as that? Of course not, no. But when you are trying to spread the word of these things happening and you want to make people aware of the situation, like, I think Vaush is genuinely trying to maybe inform his audience of something genuinely terrible that's happening in Mississippi. I still don't think it serves anybody to misrepresent the situation like this. If you're gonna talk about this, talk about it factually. Do some research, right? Because, at the beginning of the video, it's like the person, I guess the chat member asked, like, oh, have you heard about this? And he's like, yeah, I heard a little bit about it, but I'm not really sure about the whole thing. And so it's like, I'm sure all of us have been guilty of doing this at one point or another in our lives. And, as long as you're not doing it actively, like maliciously, like Vaush, even though he is misrepresenting it a lot, I don't think he's being malicious. I think he's trying his best, even though, for me, his best is not good enough. But even if, a lot of us are maybe guilty of doing this in our own lives, we still need to look very closely at the information that we are given and maybe just do a little background research on it, I hate it when people say do your own research, because the people that are doing their own research don't really know how to do research. But it really isn't hard to go to a local news outlet, which, again, PBS News Hour is totally fine. But how hard is it to go to a local news outlet, or even the outlet that broke the story, NBC News, to get that factual reporting? It's really not difficult. Another thing is that a lot of people do find out about things through streamers like Hassan and Vaush. I don't think they're doing the best of research that they can be to represent these situations accurately. And maybe it is difficult when you are streaming for like 8 hours a day to represent everything factually, but I don't know, man. Just do better. Do a little bit better so that, misinformation like this isn't spread, because no, hundreds of bodies were not dumped in a ditch in Jackson. Okay, that's not what happened. It is hundreds of bodies over the course of several years were buried in paupers' graves. Some of them did meet a terrible fate at the hands of the police, and that cannot be ignored. But the rest of them were either lifers in prison, or not even lifers in prison. People who have just died in prison for one reason or another, whose families haven't claimed their bodies. Just unclaimed bodies in general. People who are homeless, who have ended up dying and find themselves in paupers' graves. Unidentified bodies, John Does and Jane Does, that they have to bury. Those are the people that are out there, not just people have been killed by the cops. They're out there too, but they're not the only ones, okay? And I think that's really what I wanted to drive home with this video. Now, I've been recording for quite some time, and I really hope that I at least have been able to put out what I know accurately, but in case you do want to do some further reading, some actual research, I'm gonna put the primary reporting down in the description so that you can read through it and look through it and see actually what had been going on instead of, whatever surface level assumptions that Vaush is making from one PBS News Hour piece. Or, I don't want to pick on Vaush here. Again, I don't really know much about him. I don't really have a problem with him. I don't really know much about it. Again, I don't know much about him in general, but I saw this video come across my homepage, and I've been, not only seeing stuff about this online, but at work, hearing about people calling in and asking us why we aren't reporting on it when we have been reporting on it for months, okay? If you want to learn more about this situation, there are some good sources down below where you can read all about it, and hopefully you find them very informative, and hopefully you realize the truth of the situation. And now, the full truth of the situation probably won't come out for a very long time, but again, this kind of thing takes time. And if local news outlets had the amount of resources that national news outlets like NBC had, trust and believe we would be reporting on this. Because again, I don't know how many times I can say this. Police corruption is investigative reporters' bread and butter. They live for this stuff. They love it. Well, they don't love that it's happening, but they love reporting on it. They love uncovering it. So it's not some grand conspiracy between the city and the police and the media. Like, no, that's not it at all. And I hope that, as someone that does live in Jackson, #1, and works for a local news outlet, I hope that my voice and the things that I have to say mean something to the people that are watching. Because, if you're not going to take it from me, I don't know who you're going to take it from, okay? When it comes to what's actually happening. I don't really have much else to say. I think it was a whatever video. Okay, that sounded mean. It's a perfectly sufficient video, but if you actually want to know about what's going on, you can't get it from streamers. You have to go to the source because they're going to be bringing their own often incorrect assumptions about what's going on, and people are going to end up believing that, and that's not helpful to anyone. So, again, sources and further reading are down in the description. I hope this video was helpful. I don't know if it's going to be seen by too many people, but I hope the people who do see it can actually know what's actually going on. And that's all I want, is the truth to be out there. Follow me on Twitter, read my Medium articles, and listen to my podcast where I don't talk about things I don't want to say I don't talk about things I don't know about, because I probably have spoken on things that I don't know about, because, that's the human condition, I guess. But I like to keep it light on my podcast most of the time, except for that one episode. So if you just want to have a hee-hee ha-ha time, my podcast is a perfect place to go, as are the rest of my videos on my channel. I usually don't get very deep on this channel, but this is a situation where I thought, okay, I have to say something. That's going to be it for me. And if you don't mind me, today's Sunday, so I'm gonna go not be at church because I got better things to do. I don't know why I said that. Let me pick something else. I don't know. You know what? I'm keeping that in. I don't care. I'm keeping it in.